Mary Ann Choir referendum.
Well, that was just made a comment, we can't do referendum, so we don't want to make it.
David Krause.
David Krause.
Thank you to the board for the opportunity to address you this evening. There's a lot of misinformation that's been passed around in the newspapers, flyers, posters. So I just wanted to provide some clarification because I think it's important that people make decisions and have their opinions based on fact, not cherry-picking information and taking it out of context. We just started this process. I heard the comment earlier, 2 weeks ago. This process actually started, I think, closer to 2007 or 2008. I don't know how many board meetings, how many workshops, how many finance committee meetings, but this has been discussed. So this process goes back a very long time. I'm happy to see so many people interested in it now, but the information has been ongoing. Enrollment down. This project was not started because our enrollment was expanding out of our buildings. That's just a flat-out lie. The decision was based on the condition of the building. The enrollment numbers are required as part of the plan time process. So it wasn't driven by enrollment. The enrollment figures came out as required by part of that process. And of course, let's not forget the number of portables that we already have. So yes, we have outgrown the buildings in some sense because we have those portables, which are not exactly an ideal setting for education. This $13 million fund balance business. There are mandates that didn't exist 10 years ago that require us now to have reserves for PESers, retirements, and other employee benefits. If you see the retirement system in all municipalities, they don't have the funding to pay off these retirements. So these mandates are being put in place so that public agencies have the monies there for their employees when they retire, for sick days and retirement and all that. So that fund balance wasn't that high 8 years ago. So we didn't really have all this extra money. Why did we pay this off? Why did we fix that? That built up over time as a requirement for those mandates. You can't just pull that out of there and not have that funds available. The buildings weren't maintained. Again, you can come up here, you have the right to know, you can look through every bill. We've replaced, to my knowledge, some of the major items: roofs on the school buildings, HVAC, security systems, IT systems, carpet, smart boards. I mean, the list goes on. The point that we got to where it started looking at major repairs, that's what drove the decision to move into a wraparound the future repairs into a building project. And that's why in those repairs we started just doing what was needed because we knew we were going to enter into a building project. Taxes. I know you can't respond to the speakers up here, but if I could have a show of hand by all the board members, how many in here want to raise taxes on this community? So that isn't their motive. I don't believe it ever is. They make every effort, I believe, to try and minimize the tax increases for the district. So I could ask a follow-up question: how many, try to minimize the taxes? And I'm sure they would all raise their hands to that. Revenues went down due to lack of funding. Revenues went down because of the economy. And at that time, we did raise some taxes years ago. But if you look at those trends, that amount of tax rate increase dropped every year until it is down to zero right now. Zero tax increase. Elementary center. Some want to hang on to the historic 4 elementary buildings. Well, I guess 60 years ago we had 21-room elementary buildings. We could always go back to that too if we use that logic. But I really think we got to move beyond the nostalgic, not be afraid of moving forward, and put the money into our students and build a center that's going to be much more conducive to learning. You can do team teaching, differentiated instruction, use your administrators more effectively, use your teachers. We've got 2 principals in 4 buildings. We get them under 1 building. We have RTII in 2 elementary buildings that have to bounce between buildings. Why not have them in one building where every teacher would have access to them? Same with the guidance counselor. So there's where a lot of your savings are, as well as your energy costs. But it's really about the education that this new facility will provide. So that's an education value, number one. Number two is safety. Much better to secure one facility than it is 4 little tiny facilities. So that's something that really should be considered as well. And of course, the energy savings 20 years from now are not going to be any cheaper. I'm going to be very interested, and I may request to see what our energy costs were this winter, because you roll that out ahead with inflation, and we kind of lucked out the last few years, but those costs are going to go high. Lastly, Fire EI Associates. This one's a little bit confusing. At the time they were hired, we had proposals from a number of firms, and they were chosen. The information they have been providing was requested by the board and scrutinized by the board. We didn't hire them and say, you tell us what kind of building you'd like to build for us, and money is no object. Those plans have been reviewed. I've read every one of the reports, cover to back. There's been questions along the way. And what they have to do is build that worst case scenario. Nobody wants to tell you that the building project's going to be $30 million and then it's done and it's $52 million. So they're trying to capture all the costs, create a worst case scenario, and then obviously moving forward, you're going to cut every cost you can to minimize that expense. I would rather put my confidence in a professional engineering firm, as most, if not all, school districts do, rather than a couple of opinions by somebody that welds pipes or pounds nails. Our students... Our students in this community, this will take 30 seconds. Our students in this community would be better served with responsible, constructive, and positive input rather than unnecessary personal attacks on the board and spreading misinformation. I applaud the board and Mr. Cleaver for their efforts to engage the community, and I hope they have the confidence to make the decisions move forward. Thank you.